Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me today. I want to show you a painting I did back in 1991, so what's 34 years ago, so I'm recording this in 2025. So 30 odd years ago, I was painting these watercolours. As I've said in a previous video, I went through a phase of painting quite large scale watercolours, of which this is one. Now, the interesting thing I'm going to say about this is, first thing I want you to realise is the black is painted on afterwards. So the paper itself is white, and the black, all the black background you see is the very last thing I put on the design. When I look back at that, why I chose to do it like that way, I'm not really too sure. Probably I didn't know any better really. But would I do it again today? Probably not. Could I do it again today? Probably not. So this is a watercolour. Now, I think I said in other videos about watercolour. Watercolour is very basic paint. It tends to be quite kind of translucent, see-through, and people use it with still lifes and such like traditional kind of paintings. People don't often use it with abstract, and it's a shame really, because it's quite a flexible painting. Flexible paint. Now this one, I actually use this, I don't know if you can see this metallic here. Now we're talking the early 90s, and metallics were kind of still quite rare actually, especially in high street shops. You couldn't actually buy, don't think you could buy metallic paints, but we had some of the first metallic pens which were coming kind of onto the market. And metallic pens were like a fibre tip, like a marker pen, like they are today really, but they were quite new when they first kind of come on, and I was very keen to give those a go. So I created kind of this keystone pattern, I guess you could say, and I tried to make it quite 3D. Now I will put some shots of this as we go through so you can see what I'm talking about. But it gave it quite a nice effect and quite dramatic. I wanted this painting to kind of look, sounds funny, but in a kind of a luxurious way. I wanted it to look kind of slightly lavish. It sounds ridiculous thing to say now when I say it out loud, but I wanted it to appear kind of rich in colour, rich in kind of design, and also the transitions. So we've got the transitions going across from the deep red through to the pink, and then back sort of deep red and back to the pink again. I wanted those to look nice and smooth. I wanted it to be a polished painting, I suppose you could say. And I think 1991, I'd been painting seriously for about 10 years at that point using watercolour. So I was probably getting kind of used to handling the watercolour. And you can see with this way I was starting to blend the colours. Now I say blend the colours, I'm not actually blending these colours on a palette, I'm actually blending them as I paint. So I'll be using the brush strokes to transit from one colour through to another. So what I'd be doing, say on this pink area here, I'd probably underpaint the whole thing in pink, wait for that to dry, and then I'd put the red on top. Now as I'm doing the red on top, I'm going to start quite dark on one end, and then there's going to obviously get less paint on the brush as I transit across that area. So it's going to fade and fade until it just kind of blends into the pink. So that's the way I would have done that. Other ways you can blend obviously is by using various shades on the palette and kind of blending it that way, but I don't tend to do that often, to be honest. Now, one of the areas I quite like about this painting, apart from the actual design and the circular thing, which I think, again, in common with some of the other works I've done, kind of draws you into the actual centre. It's a bit of a kind of a spacey type painting, really, and it kind of draws you in. It's got these kind of lines coming out as well, these kind of what would you call them, vanishing points, that I use quite a lot to draw the viewer into the centre. And then the actual design kind of transits in the background, but I wanted the design to actually have a more of a 3D effect, so you can see some of the shapes actually come in front of this, like if you imagine that's like a picture frame design kind of thing there. Lots of things go behind the shapes, but there's a couple like that's going behind, but this one is actually coming out and over the top. Now in this painting I've used a colour which I don't often use. I've used first I've used this kind of a green up here. I don't know what green you'd call it really. I think I mixed that. It's not a colour I would have purchased. So I generally speaking don't purchase colours as a rule. I just purchase the primary colours and mix anything else up. One of the areas that I did quite like was this bit up here, and again I'll put a still of this up so you can take a closer look. Now this area up here, as you can see in the still, it's made up of a lot of shades of grey, and I would have mixed those to as I wanted them, but I had to mix them in a way that obviously I could put them on the areas and they didn't clash. So you can't have two greys obviously next to each other, otherwise you're going to lose the definition between one and the other. What I have used on this, as you can see in the still, I've actually used some little pinpricks of gold. Now, if you look at this quite carefully, you'll actually see one particular part of the gold is actually starting to, I guess you could say, sort of bleed slightly. And I think that is the actually oil in the makeup of the metallic paint. I mean, we're talking 34 years old, so it's quite old, but I've noticed that. I hadn't really noticed that before until this time. But yeah, quite a pleasing painting, pleasing to the eye. I was really, really chuffed with this when I finished with it. And yeah, elements that kind of continued on into other paintings. So this was kind of quite early on in my kind of artistic career, I suppose you could say. And I was starting to blend colours. So yeah, come on quite well. I pretty like these kind of jagged areas, like the edges of the frame. I kind of wanted to incorporate as well, just to make it, give it a bit of a roughness, if you like. So a bit of a sharpness, so it isn't all super smooth and super sort of slick. And yeah, come out all right. Anyway, thanks a lot for your time on that one. Hope you enjoyed looking at that. If you see anything in it that I've not, because people always see bits in paintings that I don't see. I don't think there's a huge amount to see in this, actually. It's quite a nice overall design, but nothing fantastic. But as a painter, probably one of the most challenging things I've ever had to paint. So putting the black on afterwards on white paper, would I do that again? No, but there you go. You learn these things as you get older, but it come out okay. And just for the record, every layer of paint on this is at least 3 layers thick. I think the black might have gone over the black 5 times, all the areas. And what I will say, what I did learn actually, is when you're painting, never, ever, 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 ever switch tubes of paint. Even if you're painting like a big area of black, never ever switch tubes. Even if you've got another tube of paint identical, I can tell you from experience, when you put that paint on, it will not be the same. If you're putting areas next to each other like this, that is going to be different. And it's going to be different, not because of the paint and not because of the pigment, but because purely how you've mixed it. So with especially watercolors, you've got to mix it with water. That dilution is never ever going to be exactly the same again, unless you measure it down to like the micro milliliter or whatever the measurement is. As you're painting at the mix, it's never going to be the same. The concentration is never ever going to be the same. So I think when I did this, I did make a mistake and changed the mix at one point. So, but as a rule, if you're doing big areas, mix up as much paint as you're going to use in that particular area or on the paint, and then do what you need to do and come back to it and cover the whole thing again in another layer. But don't mix certain areas with different dilutions. It just doesn't work. So there we go. It's just a nice point, just pointing out some of the whites, actually the white highlights. And I've mentioned the white highlights in other videos as well. But it's one of those things you need to take a closer look at. I don't know if the light's going to pick up this gold, probably not, because the light isn't great in here. Anyway, thanks a lot for your time on that one. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at that. Drop a comment, anything you've seen. If you want to make a comment about a painting, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't really bother me. I reply to most comments. I reply to all comments. And let me know what you think about that one. So feel free to share the image of this one. I think it's a really nice painting, this. And I think because the gold, I'm not too sure how long it's going to last. 34 years, it's done okay so far. I think give it another 34 years, we might start to lose some of this metallic. And that's one of the reasons I was quite keen to do this video and put the stills up in the video, so you can see it just for kind of posterity. And it's like all pieces of work, you don't know how long they're going to last. I mean, my work does last decades, many decades, but when you're using something like this at a time which is quite new, these metallics, it's always a chance you take. So thanks a lot. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing that. Give it a little thumbs up if you'd like to do that, and it'd be good to hear from you. And I'll see you in the next video. You take care of yourself. I'll speak to you soon. Take care then. Bye bye.